Hi. Sorry if anyone's missed out on my expertly curated content over the last couple of days. I haven't made as many videos as I normally do. I want to talk this evening just briefly about my project for filmmaking about omnivorous diets and the way that we kind of kid ourselves into ignoring the plight of animals who we see as a food source rather than as sentient beings. But in the script of the film, as I've sort of said, what happens is that these sort of primitive, demented degenerates kill these two little girls and then feed them to their mother and to some other people. And then there's a guy who gets his parents fed to him, but he doesn't know at the time until they sort of start mocking it, and he slowly becomes aware. And so there's a juxtaposition between the prescient awareness and the way that that would make you sort of break down emotionally and psychologically, and the kind of slow dawning realization of the male character that this has taken place. And there's a great Gorgon City track that's just come out called Loveless. And in the film, one of the things I want to portray is the way that, like, they all get away with it, the guys who did it in this film. And that kind of represents the acquiescent masses who eat omnivorous diets without any sort of conscience, like bangers and mash, just nice, isn't it? It's just like, it's not a moral quandary to have a bacon sandwich. I've eaten many myself, and I've never thought about pigs at any point eating bacon sandwiches. But in this film, although they do get away with it in the end, they're sort of portrayed, there's a poignant, I think, like, I'm going to make like a dinner party scene. And the dinner party scene is kind of divided up, right? So you've got the people who don't know so the guys who killed the little girls and fed them to their mum just because they were evil, they, like 6 or 7 people at the dining table, don't realise that they're eating with cannibalistic serial killers. And then like two of the people do, and the two of the people that are there at the dinner party are just there because their friends are going and they kind of want to keep it a secret. But eventually, I've kind of used this analogy a few times when I've been running over the kind of sort of storyboarding and screenplay in my head anyway. And oh shit, my ring lights had it. Yeah, so like, they're divided up, these people and their loved ones, their friends, everyone who knows them basically, are divided up into these two hemispheres, right? So you've got like the people who they lie to, who don't know who they are and what they've done, and still love and respect them, still greet them with a hug and a handshake, and pass them a joint and share a cup of tea. Think, what lovely people these people are. And then you've got the people who know, and detest these people. They just find them utterly revolting, repugnant, and irrevocably morally destroyed. So you've kind of got the people, they're separated up at this dinner party scene. People who still love and respect them only because they live in a fallacy and a lie, like this false paradigm of like moral acceptance. And then the people who know what they did and still give them a time of day, who aren't worth knowing, basically. These people are only other sort of degenerate, murderous people who can sanctify or justify their actions. And that's basically everyone in their life. They've either got other, worthless, self-deprecating murderers, which represents the kind of meat industry and the acquiescence of that. And then people they lie to, who don't really know who they are and what they did and, how they made their money, and still respect them. And once you get to that point, it's like some of the people, to start with, have got kind of like their own lives, and there's tragedy in their own lives, and there's loss, but there's no cannibalism, there's no sort of like, but they all have kind of brief character, a bit sort of like I think in a kind of Black Mirror meets sort of The Shining meets Silence of the Lambs kind of way. I kind of want to give these characters at the dinner party a bit of backstory. Like they've all got kind of like their own harrowing issues, and they've faced trauma and death themselves. But once they kind of, kill these children and feed them to the mother, it's like their plight and their sort of rational capacity to receive sympathy or empathy is sort of depleted, like a snowball in a volcano. It just kind of, like any good grounds they had for like sympathy and reciprocity is just depleted. And I think that the meat industry, people who work in an abattoir are not like shunned in society. They're respected. It's a well respected. It's not like a fucking glamorous job, but it's a respected career. Except for vegetarians and vegans who probably wouldn't invite their mate who works at an abattoir, or like have a mate who works in an abattoir. They would probably have a moral judgment against that thing. I had some macaroni cheese a couple of days ago with real cheese, and that should have been drunk by a calf somewhere. I shouldn't have eaten it, but I did eat it, and like I guess I didn't feel awful afterwards, but it was on my mind. I just didn't like the look of the kind of like spunky, gelatinous vegan cheese imitation they had in the tray downstairs. But yeah, like, in this film, the characters are just left with this sort of void of like false friends, like a bit like in that film, is it Shipwrecked with Tom Hanks, where he's got his like effigy he makes out of a coconut. Like all their friends are basically that. They're just this kind of like Barbie doll, blow up doll, kind of complete sort of fictions of their minds, where they make eye contact and they hug them and they say, "Hey man, great to see you. Love you, bye." And the people just wish they're being kind of themselves in a figurative way eaten up inside, because they just don't. They know that they're utterly worthless human beings, and that what they've done is just unforgivable, in anybody's book. Doesn't matter what you've been through. It's like there's nothing that, it does matter what you've been through. It's relevant. It's cause and effect, and it's disproportionate response to an effect that, they didn't have the kind of resilience or emotional intelligence to digest, Maybe that's the wrong word, but there is a kind of a bit of a sanctity for that causality represented in the script, I'm hoping, or in the screenplay. But ultimately, yeah, there's people that they lie to that still love them, and then there's people who sort of still respect them even though they know what they did, and those people aren't worth knowing because there are only other people who are so fucking warped that they think that, eating a boy or an animal, as a food source is morally justifiable, but it's put into the context of human beings, like Silence of the Lambs, to kind of express that kind of unspoken vernacular of mortality and death being associated with meals and food. But yeah, I mean, I guess, these people have just got to sort of look at their social circle, their friends and their family, and be like, who still loves you, like who still respects you after what you did? Like what do you kind of what do you think that the people who can atone for that aren't really worth knowing, and that's kind of like the whole omnivorous populace. They are kind of the people who don't give a shit about the climate or the welfare of sentient beings or the suffering of children in Palestine and Gaza. I mean, if you've got Keir Starmer rooting for you after he's just used depleted uranium and like classified trialed weapons on children living in refugee camps, and is still trying to kind of put a sort of public, multifaceted, layered persona onto the media of some form of legitimacy by kind of saying that there should be a ceasefire, and he's kind of washing his hands of responsibility by saying that the ceasefire needs to happen even though he knows it's not going to, and they're not going to probably vote for it. They're going to or really make it happen, because the Israel policy decisions and foreign policy interactions and global interdependent military classified infrastructure and the economic strata are joined at the hip. But yeah, these people just basically have like mannequins, who they sort of dance the dance of human interaction with, and then just these other sort of like pitiful, supine, insubordinate scum who just think it's all right, like, suppose it's a bit dark, but fair play, it's not that bad. And that is kind of, when you eat pork belly, it's kind of what you're doing, you know what I mean? You just sort of like, you know that these animals, they get like gassed, pigs, in gas chambers, just like they did in the Holocaust, And it's like really fucking dark. I saw this horrible video on Instagram the other day of an activist stood outside an abattoir, and you could just hear these visceral screams, and it was like, fucking hell, like I've never seen that before. I never really thought of it, and it was just kind of shocking. But yeah, if anyone wants to collaborate on cannibal culture, then like do let me know, because I'd really like it to critique the kind of inverted, obverse, subjective, naive and diversionary moral narrative of the dairy industry and the meat industry and factory farming as a whole. I mean, we rely on farms to feed loads of our people. Fishing as well, fishing, like I had tuna and mayo lunch today, and I was like, I didn't feel good about it, but it's just what I kind of selected. I still eat a little bit of fish, and like it says in the Nirvana lyrics, okay to eat fish because they don't have any feelings, but I think they do. I think they're kind of quite highly intelligent aquatic mammals. You see all those deep, you see all the deep sea creatures that are like bioluminescent and stuff, and like, I don't know if anyone still on the internet, just Google it, like the whales in massive pods. See if I can find it. It's amazing. Whales congregating in massive circular pods. 2025. Maybe not. I saw it earlier on. That's just ruined my video now. No, that's what it is. Thinks it's fucking whales. There you go. Where's a good one? Images, forum, flights, videos, news. and had some dolphins in January. I saw it on Instagram earlier on. Bollocks. Anyway, there's been whales over the last couple of months, congregating in like thousands, all in. That's a bit like what I saw, but these guys were like all going around in circles, and nobody knows why. They're like, I don't know if these are new videos. Anyway, aquatic animals, fish still have faces, and I think some of them are probably hyper intelligent, like cephalopods and jellyfish. And I mean, I don't eat prawns because I hate them, but yeah, like I used to eat a lot of sardines and tomato sauce, but that's a story for another day. Anyway, tell the people that you love them, and if you have to lie through your teeth while you're picking bits of human flesh out of them, then I guess you have my sympathy, like, and no hard feelings. Like, I guess it's all part of the circle of life, but I'll put it all down into a film, and it will be thought provoking, and I'll be able to be a more committed vegan, and the people who watch it will, look at the idea of kind of our bodies not being a food source, certainly children's bodies not being a food source, and whatever the motive, whatever the kind of like preamble, it's just no way it's justifiable, and it's not really justifiable to eat pigs or goats or chickens or lambs or springbok or ostrich or bison or any like meat from a mammal, really, is it? But anyway, let me know your thoughts in your comments. Have you recently killed and eaten any children or fed them to their family members? And if so, what do your friends and family think of you? Do they still love and respect you? Have you set a good example for your children? Are they going to grow into kind of fine, upstanding pillars of the community, or do you think they're going to be viscerally, psychologically damaged by the traumatic and harrowing nature of your revolting crimes of retribution? Because if they are, then maybe, I don't know, maybe you should go to the like depression and anxiety service or get some sort of counselling or whatever. Change my wallpaper, but no one's supposed to see that. Anyway, cheers. Take it easy, yeah?